introduction. Welcome everybody to the Take. Oh, I'm getting tongue-tied, tongue-twisted. Welcome everybody to the Take a Stand online conference, a 4-day online event where I'm interviewing 35 incredible women who have stories of triumph over trauma that they would like to share with you, in the hope that that will inspire you and let you know that is light at the end of the tunnel. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Thank you for coming back onto YouTube and watching this series. I really appreciate your support and glad that you are here. If you're new to the channel, this channel is all about living life trauma-free. If you could consider subscribing, click that notification bell and give a thumbs up. And if you have any questions for Catharine, just pop them in the chat box below the video, or on Facebook or on LinkedIn or whichever platform you are on. Now, these conversations can be emotionally, I was going to say challenging, but I don't like that word, but they can bring emotions up to the surface. So I just want to say, please do get the emotional support that you need. Speak to family members, speak to friends. If you don't have a circle of people that you can talk to, reach out to your doctor. If you feel that you need immediate emotional support, pop yourself down to the local A&E, we call it here. I'm actually in Thailand. I was going to say here in England, but I mean in England. I'm in Thailand, but you know what I mean. Your local hospital where you can access emergency services, but just make sure that you are safe. So welcome, Catharine. It's lovely to have you as one of the speakers on this 4-day event.
Hi, Wendy. It's nice to be here.
I'm looking forward to learning more about your story of triumph over trauma.
Thank you. It's, as I was mentioning before, it's just a minute ago to Wendy, before we came on, it's been a very long time for me since it happened, over 40 years. But you know, it does stay in your mind, meaning that yes, going back and thinking about it can be a little bit upsetting, but then over the years, as I'll mention later, I have learned to deal with it and heal from it. And I'm here because I want to share my story so that I can hopefully help someone else who might be in that situation now have the courage to leave. And my story started, well, actually, I was abused twice. I have 2 sons, and they have 2 different fathers. And the first time I was only 19 when I was pregnant with my son, and my ex was abusive. And I left that relationship. And unfortunately, I met someone else who was also abusive, and we had a son together. And I finally came to the resolution one day that I was going to leave. I think, like a lot of women, we think that things are going to change. The person keeps saying, oh, they're sorry, they won't do it again. And then eventually it happens again. So I finally, after a couple of years, decided to leave. And I kind of I actually had to go behind the person's back, obviously, to look for a place to live, to make plans and everything. And so, but basically what happened is that he came home from work one day, and we were gone, the 3 of us. And I just, took everything with me and disappeared. We're still in the same town, but it was big enough city that we weren't it was very unlikely we'd run into each other. although, I mean, he knew where I worked and actually sent me some flowers along with my favorite candy to my work, which I promptly threw in the garbage. But um, and eventually, I think after a year or so, I did let him know, where we lived. But at the time, of course, I was very afraid. I didn't know what he was going to do when we left. So, and over time, eventually, I thought about the fact that I had been in two relationships that were abusive. So not just once, but twice. And so I had to think about why was I in the relation? What made, and what made me stay? And I didn't want this to happen again. So I did a lot of thinking, and I got very introspective, and I said to myself, someone who feels good about who they are, is self-confident, has self-esteem, um, is, values their own self-worth, they aren't going to get in a situation like that. So I said, what is it about me that I was in that in the first place? And then again, in the second time, and what if, obviously, since I went into a relationship, an abusive relationship again, then whatever caused me to get into the relationship the first time was not resolved. So again, did a lot of thinking, and said, just basically came down to that I needed to work on my self-esteem and, feel better about myself and who I was, and that I didn't, deserve to be treated like that. And as a lot of you who, probably know have been abused, it usually isn't just physical abuse, it's usually emotional and mental. And I certainly suffered from that. But, and they have a tendency to make, to blame you, make you say it's your fault. And, which of course is not true. And, but there's a lot of that psychological kind of abuse too. But in the end run, no, I didn't believe that I deserved that. So I worked on that over the years, and I have never been in a physically abusive relationship. Or an abusive relationship. I've been in relationships sometimes with people who weren't what I really wanted, or weren't treating me the best way that I felt that I deserved. But I never again tolerated any kind of abuse. But it's not an easy road. It's a long road. And as Wendy said, you need support. And I talked a lot over the years, with friends and family, and I went to therapy, years of therapy. So you need all of those things to help you through. And also, the other thing I thought about was, wow, I mean, how did I subconsciously attract this kind of person, right? So you want to look at that too. And so I learned that I have to be, really careful about, very conscious of who I'm attracted to. Actually, my my youngest son's father was very good looking, very charming, and I realized that I had a tendency to give too much weight to looks or things like that. And because, beneath the looks and the charms, there was an abuser, and who was also an alcoholic and a drug addict. So your life becomes, when you're with someone like that, becomes like a living nightmare. So, and nobody, you do not deserve that. You are enough, you are worthy, and if you learn to respect yourself, then you won't tolerate that. As a coach, I specialize in helping women set boundaries. And so I think of this as the ultimate boundary setting to say no to the abuse. And it isn't easy to say no. Women are socialized to, at least, when I was young, to be, nice and sweet and accommodating and all that, excuse me, crap. So, and not as much, nowadays. And women are really speaking out, which is wonderful. And that's why it's so important that we do have these kind of conversations and messages like, kudos to you, Wendy, for doing this, because it's really imperative that we get it out there and speak about it. Just like the Me Too movement, 1 in 3 women have been raped, and I'm one of those 1 in 3. And that happened when I was very young, someone I knew.
It's a staggering statistic, isn't it? It's absolutely mind-blowing to get your head around. Because not only have you got the victims, but you've also got the people that have committed the crime. It's like the numbers, that means that in your circle of people, there are going to be abusers and victims. It's just nobody knows, because no one's talking about it. Nobody knows who they are.
Well, I was listening yesterday to an interview that you had, and I believe her name was Lois Hollis.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And she talked about, shame and guilt. And of course, women definitely feel shame around this. It's not easy to talk about, but it's very common. And I remember, when the Me Too movement first started, and it was all like on Twitter and everything. And I posted on there too. I had forgotten also that I grew up in San Francisco, and I was on a streetcar one day, and I was a teenager. I don't remember exactly. I don't know, maybe 13, 14. And I was in a crowded streetcar, and this man started groping me, and it terrified me, of course. I tried to get away. And I know, like, nowadays, I would start screaming and yelling and turn around, like, but I think they count on that, that you're going to be scared, that you're going to keep quiet. And this has happened. I would say that there's probably aren't too many women who haven't had something like that happen to them, during their life. And so, yeah, it is. The statistics are amazing. One thing I think is that the mindset for men needs to change, because it is apparent that, especially, like when they're younger too, the boys or young men who commit these crimes, they really don't see it as them doing something wrong.
Yeah, it's almost like it's become the norm, because it's not been spoken about. It's just, it seems to be acceptable. It seems to be the norm. It's got to be out in the open. It's got to be spoken about.
Yeah, this attitude, and this was actually something that was expressed not too long ago by someone whose son was accused of rape and got off. And his father's attitude was, boys will be boys. And it's like, and we have to call them on that, because it's traumatizing for the person, the woman that it happens to, and it changes your whole life, and it can really damage your future relationships. And to act like, oh, it's boys will be boys and it's a nothing, it's just not
It says it
acceptable.
all, really, doesn't it? I mean, it just says it all. It just says it all
I
to me.
know.
It's like,
And yeah, and the fact that someone would say that in this day and age is appalling. And so, all of these things, of course, need to change, and bringing it to light is one of the most important things we can do. And in other words, we have to say, you know what, we're going to speak about it, we're going to talk about it, maybe get angry or whatever we're going to do, and we're going to be in your face, and we are not going away. So I'm writing a book called Women Are Our Own Worst Enemy, and that is another topic about how women don't always support each other the way they should, and how imperative it is. And this is part of that whole thing, of supporting each other and saying, this is not okay, not being competitive, say in the corporate space, for example. I've heard stories about that. And we have to stick together. And I believe so strongly that women are amazing. And that's why I'm passionate about working with them. I always say that, we might get kicked and we're down, and we might scream and yell and pound the floor, but we get up and we keep going. We don't give ourselves enough credit for what we do, and we're just kind of like, well, oh, that's a nothing. It's not a nothing. We need to acknowledge, our strengths and our how amazing we are and incredible, and the things that we do. And I have on my Facebook page, it says, I have a picture and it says, the future is female. And I really, really believe that, and want to be a strong part of making, that happen. And I want to send that message out to other women so that they will understand this, the message and how important it is, and start supporting each other more.
Catharine, with the work that you do with the women that you're working with, or the people that you're working with, what's a common thread that you see amongst them? What is it that that theme that belongs to the group of women it is that you're working with? What's that common thing that runs through the clients that you're working with?
Yeah, the common theme, when people are having issues with setting boundaries, and the reason I work with women is our issues, I believe, have a lot to do with that socialization, as I mentioned. And we do not, a lot of women are people pleasers. We want people to like us. We don't want someone to get angry at us. And if if someone asks us to do something, just for example, and we say no, we don't want them to get upset. And unfortunately, when we don't set boundaries, then we have set this expectation that people can, take advantage of us. And people do that sometimes unconsciously, give someone an inch, they take a mile. So that common theme is that fear, that, worry. Obviously, in an abusive situation, it's fear of being hurt. But in other types of situations where we should say no, we are afraid of someone getting upset or angry with us, especially family members and friends.
Where do you think that comes from?
I think, again, I think it's like, yeah, that people pleasing thing, but also women are looked at a certain way as we're the nurturers, that kind of thing. And so, going against the grain and saying no goes against that, that kind of belief, about how women are supposed to be and how they're supposed to act. I can definitely tell you in middle management and corporate, I was definitely treated differently than the men. And, so it has, it has not changed as much as it needs to, especially in this day and age. And don't get me started about the fact that we haven't had a woman president yet.
You almost got there, almost.
Yeah. So, but it's again something that we need to work together toward, and be out there and speak out about it. And it's not easy, but you know what? I did finally have the courage to leave, and part of it was because I didn't want my children to be around that. But it and I am proud of myself for getting out of that. And it is truly can be a nightmare. And for anyone who is going through that, please remember there are people to help you and reach out. Men tend to isolate the people they're abusing. Don't let them do that. There's help there that you can get. Speak out. Sometimes people, your friends and family, don't even know what's going on. You need to let them know.
Do you think it's a myth? I don't know the answer to this question. I'm just going to answer it. I mean, ask it. Do you think it's a myth that there is a breaking point? Because I've heard this time and time again. I'm not sure whether it's a myth or not. That there's a breaking point for women when they're in an abusive relationship. Like they'll get slapped 30 times, and then 30 times is the common breaking point. I don't know. That's probably an over exaggeration. I'm not sure, but I've heard this quite a lot, that something has to have happened so many times for that person to snap. I don't know if that's a myth or not.
Honestly, I don't know. I think it's probably true. Well, I mean, in different, not just in that situation, but I think in lots of situations like that, there is something, like they say, the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
And, or as they say in Spanish, la gota de agua que rebasa el vaso, the drop of water that overfilled the glass. So
that's nice in Spanish.
Yeah, it's my second language. So, but yeah, the drop of water that overfilled the glass, in other words, just this thing that you have to, something that said you finally had it. And so I think for me, it was just that realization that after being told, no, they're not going to, he's not going to do it again. He's sorry. And then it happened again. And then just one day after, there's so many times that it happened. You finally just, this isn't going to change. I need to get out. So, and unfortunately, that doesn't always happen, though, for all women. Some women unfortunately stay until they are killed, and which is tragic, but
those figures are quite high. I think those figures are quite high as well. I
Yeah,
saw
and
something today. I can't remember
I
what
can't, actually speak to, a specific number or I don't know you know, if that is a myth or not. Although to me, honestly, it makes a lot of sense. You know, I think if we think about it, yeah. And and hopefully people will come to that. I think I was lucky. I think I came to that sooner than later. I was in it for 2 years. Some women stay much longer. And some women, actually, there is a statistic that I know that statistically, a lot of women go back 7 times before they finally leave.
Wow.
Yeah, that was not
7
true in my.
times.
Yeah, I got that statistic from a film I saw that about a girl who ended up going to a battered women's shelter, and the woman at the shelter told her that statistic.
Yeah. Wow. I
I
mean,
know.
I worked with the police years ago, and I used to. It's called an appropriate adult. So you help people when they're arrested. You sit in on the interview, and you help people through the process of going through interview if they're convicted of a crime. And they would always They would always talk about, there will be so many incidents, and then someone will finally snap. And they would always give a number, and I would always be like rather suspicious of this number, because I would just be like, that can't be so. But I guess when they do the research and they do a generalization of the people coming into the system, I guess you can get some sort of rounded number. And it's quite shocking that they can actually come to that conclusion and get a number. That is even shocking in itself for me to hear anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm assuming that, statistically they're taking a certain sample of people and looking at that, and they come up with a number. And it could, and the thing is, it could be high. The thing about, especially rape, the numbers are much higher because women don't speak out because of that shame.
Yeah.
So, you've got a sample population. Sorry, I took statistics in college twice. You've got a sample population, but is that,
it's not accurate?
Right. Yeah. It's how can it be accurate?
Yeah.
That's only the people who have spoken out. So it's not really a realistic number.
No, and I can understand why people don't speak out. You've got, you've got the medical profession, you've got the police, you've got the criminal system, there are so many things going against people in the reporting process that there's no wonder why it's underreported, and so few people are charged and convicted.
Well, one of the things that I have always thought about, because of my experience, is, and I understand legally how this works on a logical level, but the thing is that when you do, in my case, I actually didn't, my mother called the police. We lived in the same building. And I ended up, going to the hospital and all that. And the thing that to me is so is upsetting is that after you've been raped, you have to go through this exam. Like the last thing in the world you would want, right?
Yeah.
Just so you can prove legally that this person did this to you. And it seems, and again, I understand it, and from a logical standpoint and legal, but it's like being violated again. And it's awful. I wish there was some other way. And then also, I know about an organization that I found out through my women's networking group, where they provide clothes for the person after they've been in the hospital, gone through the exam, because as I know from an experience, the police take everything, your bedding,
Yeah.
everything. And
Yeah.
these girls sometimes have nothing to wear.
Yeah.
So again, just the continued trauma, and it's not even it's because of the perpetrator, but it's not the perpetrator at this point causing the trauma.
It sort of seals there's no acknowledgement, is there? It sort of locks it in even deeper.
Yes.
It locks the trauma in even deeper than the process that the people are taking through.
Right. And that's just it. You feel like, you feel like part of a process that you're going through this. Yeah.
It's a tick-box exercise, basically, is what it is.
And and it seems so very impersonal, of course. And and I know they do, I believe now they have women police officers who come talk to you and that kind of thing. But it's a really difficult thing. And really, if we could just, I don't believe this will ever end completely, but if we could really change things for men so that they understand what this really means, how awful it really is. We need to change their behavior and their way of looking at it.
There is a big gap in terms of education, I think. Education, resources, parenting, and talking about such challenging issues. There's a real lack in terms of educational material. The knowledge and the expertise just isn't been, and the stories just aren't being passed down for the younger generation to hear, I think.
Yeah. And the
in
education.
a way that they can hear, in a way that they can, I think that's also what's missing, is in a way that people can hear. Because these stories are hard to hear for people, and sometimes they have to be put in such a way that people can actually hear it, can actually take it on board and hear it.
Well, and even though I've been through the abuse myself, for example, when I heard Lois's story and she said something about being pushed down cement stairs, and oh my God, I just cringed inside, and I just felt this pain.
My cats are fighting, sorry. So my cats are going off. One in the background.
That's okay. My kitty's on the bed under the covers.
Hey, they're so noisy. My cats, I've never known cats like them. They make these most incredible noises. They're not even in a fight, and the noise that comes out, and they're so small. The noise that comes out of them is, sorry, I got completely distracted there. Hey.
No, that's okay. I like I said, I have a cat myself, and they're quite interesting.
I love them.
And you really, as they say, if something's difficult, you say it's like herding cats. You can't tell cats what to do.
No, that's for sure. But it's yes. I guess the question is, for me, looking back now, is knowing what you know now, what would you say to your younger self in that situation?
You mean if I was in that situation or before getting into it?
So, well, okay, irrelevant of situation, just thinking back, if you could say something to your younger self, what is it that you would say?
First of all, I would say to my younger self, I love you. You are incredible. You are enough. You're not lacking. You're not missing anything. You are amazing and courageous. and you deserve to have the best life possible. And you need to go out and make that happen. So, and then I would give my younger self a big hug.
Nice. Nice. I'm sure she'd love that as well.
And I think that's, you know, one thing that when I was writing yesterday, I said, and it's something I do with myself too. When I feel like, you know, I'm not doing enough or messing up, or we all feel like that. And I would say to women out there, be kind to yourself. It's, you know, if you're not, even if you are in that situation and maybe you haven't left yet, you're thinking about it, and say, okay, you're still there. You know, you tried to get out and it didn't work at that time or whatever. Be kind to yourself. Give yourself credit where credit is due, and just keep trying, but don't beat yourself up. Women are so hard on themselves, harder than anyone else, and don't go there. You know, give yourself that hug. That Sometimes I think about hugging my 5-year-old self. Apparently I was pretty precocious when I was a kid. And when I was a little kid, even when I was 3, my mother said I would go down the block and play with my friends. This was in the 1950s, obviously, and I wouldn't come home all day. And I was this fierce little kid, and sometimes that gets, like, maybe not literally, but in different ways beaten out of us. Even I've been a teacher, even in school, where we have to conform, you know. But yeah, be that fierce little girl, the one you were when you were a little girl, before people tried to tell you what you couldn't do or couldn't be.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Is that it just gets taken out of us, doesn't it? We get taught to conform in so many different ways that we lose that. We lose the essence and the spark, I think, of who we truly are.
Right. And that was especially pointed out to me, you know, obvious when I became a teacher, because they have all these, at least here in the US in the public schools, all these expectations of what the kids are supposed to achieve and this and that. And it's like, but I was more concerned about the child, their psyche, their well-being, you know?
Yeah. Catharine, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate your story and listening to your insight and wisdom. And I'm sure whoever is going to listen to your story is that they will be able to take a lot from it.
Yeah, I thank you for having me on the show. And as I said, it's really important to get my message out there. And and especially to let other, you know, women know that they are supported, that they are cared for, and excuse me, and that you're not alone. And obviously, when you're in that abusive situation, you feel very alone. You're not the only one there, you know, and there are people that will help and support you. So reach out, and that's the hardest thing. But somehow put together the courage and believe in yourself.
Yeah, and don't wait until it's proper crisis, until it's full-on crisis. There are so many things you can do between now and breaking point to make sure that you actually don't get to breaking point, because you'll know if there's something wrong already. You'll know it. You'll know it in your gut. You just maybe not be doing something about it, but it's just time to do something about it rather than waiting. Sometimes the fear of the unknown is the worst thing.
Yes.
Because it's never that bad on the other side. It's just the fear of the unknown, I think, stopped so many, including myself, stopped me from doing so many things that would have actually been quite easy to do. Just because I was so fearful of doing them, I didn't do it. So don't wait until last minute is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, don't let it be the devil you know versus the one you don't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because the other one
Yeah.
is definitely much better. Yeah,
And
for
the other
sure.
thing, and the other thing is that in those abusive situations, that's, I say one more thing is that it does not get better. Men escalate. If they started out slapping you, they will eventually end up breaking bones. So yeah, it does not ever get better. Remember that.
That's a really good point to finish on, I think. Catherine, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Wendy. Thank you for having me.
Take care.
You too.